Hi everyone, I'm Alice. Some of you might know me as Alice in Wonderland as my handle on Transgurus. As promised, I said we would do a video answering some questions if you had any. This is my wife Casey. We've known each other for 8 years. We haven't gone out this entire time together, but we did get married when I was still presenting male. We met when I was still presenting male, or as a man, and we have gone through transition together in that situation. So we figured we'd give you a little bit of background about us and then go through some of the questions you've asked. So I'll let Casey introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Casey. As Alice said, we met pre-transition, and before we got married, Alice told me about her intentions of transitioning and questioning her gender identity, and it was definitely something that came as a bit of a shock to me at first because I didn't have that experience ever. I don't know what that's like to completely question your gender identity, and I think it was just something that I wish it was something that I had known about or something that I could have helped her with. But of course you can't really know what's going on in someone's mind unless they open it to you. So I was really glad that she told me that, and I of course still wanted to marry her because here we are married. And we have been working on that before you publicly transitioned, and we would do little tiny things to kind of see if this is something that she wanted to do for real. So we would do little makeup sessions, and I would help her apply some makeup, and we went thrift shopping to get more feminine presenting clothing in your size, which was a bit of a struggle.
Well, I was deathly afraid of going into the shop and sort of outing myself at the time. This was a while ago. This was early in the transition, when we finally got a little bit of privacy in our home. Just because there's people here. My parents were still there, so it was a little nerve-wracking going shopping at first. Casey did help me tremendously to find stuff that would at least sort of fit me. What was a bit of the issue for me at first is that I had worked at a gym for quite a few years and had also worked out at that gym. So I had built
a lot of muscle mass.
Which made it hard to find proper clothes that would fit me, especially gendered clothes. And so when I first came out to Casey about gender identity, I had figured out that I was at least potentially gender fluid at first. And then where I wanted to live on the spectrum is a bit up in the air.
Right.
And eventually with that revelation I came out as, no, I am a trans woman. I want to live as a woman in this world, even if it comes with loss of privileges and also a lot of difficulties. So there were some difficulties throughout on my end that was a little more maybe difficult to communicate. So it was maybe a little difficult to sort of go through everything together, just because I'm as much as I knew what to sort of expect, I also didn't know everything. There was a lot of figuring out through the transition.
Well, it's hard to tell someone when you're questioning something about yourself and how to let them know, because of course your partner wants to help you, but it's not necessarily something that you can help with as long as that person is still questioning it, because they're the one ultimately who has to make the decision. And I'm glad that you made a decision, because sometimes it really is it's difficult to figure out how you want to live in this world, and it's very difficult, and you made a really tough decision, but I'm glad you did, because when we were writing the in-between, I think it was really hard on you.
For both of us.
Yeah.
It was difficult for me because it was figuring out what I ultimately wanted. Like many of us, I'm sure, I was thinking, can I live still presenting as a man in this world, and live closeted, or not, and eventually I couldn't, so I did make a decision
Right.
back in December of 2021, where, well, I made the decision a little earlier, but December 2021, I was done, completely done, and I came out. And honestly, I think for both of us, it's been for the better.
Completely. And I think during your transition, the early transition stages, a lot of what you were really concerned about was, are you able to pass? Even though that is not every single person's, I suppose it's not their ultimate goal. Not everyone in the trans community, I believe, I'm not a part of that community, but from what I hear is that it's not necessarily the goal for everyone, but I know for you, that was a big concern.
It was. It's unfortunate, but the reason why I really wanted to pass, and even though it's not necessarily important, was partly for security. I didn't want to be harassed in the street. I didn't want to deal with always having to explain, which, I mean, I still do with friends and family, where some people that I still haven't figured out, like most of the people know, you don't come out just once. You come out first to close friends and family, then you come out to other friends, then you come out to your bank, you come out to, like, it's a whole process, and it's continuously coming out. However, passing does, for me, was important at first, but the more we go, the less maybe it is, because I'm just a lot happier. It's a big difference.
Yeah.
That being said, so couple-wise, I know maybe something we should preface it with is that most couples won't last through transition, unfortunately. It's not, first of all, it's not a common thing to have a partner transition. I mean, we're not that many
Statistically
that are out and that do this. So it's good to keep in mind that unfortunately most couples don't last through transition, even if some people try to make it work for years. And look, we might not be that different, but I'm hopeful based off of how far we've come.
Right.
But keep in mind that it's very possible that a couple cannot really survive a transition. And it's to no fault of the person transitioning, for sure. And for the partner of the person transitioning, it's sometimes also none of their fault. Like there's a lot that comes into it, from questioning sexuality to also just their own gender identity maybe might come into question, but also like someone who, let's say for me, going from a man to a woman, is your partner sexually attracted to women or sexually attracted to someone who is transitioning? That is a little difficult to say, because some people are straight, some people are gay, and it's not going to necessarily change with the transition. They might question it for a bit and maybe make it work, or try to make it work, but it's a very difficult thing.
There's a lot of factors that come into play, especially with sexuality. I think it's not always going to work out in that department, but I think the reason we do so well is because we ultimately have a friendship at the end of the line. And I think even before transitioning, we definitely had some communication issues, but I think this transition for you has strengthened our communication issues, our communication.
Yeah, our communication is a lot better. Well, I think for me, because once I've come to accept who I was, and started, let me maybe clarify a few things. So when I first started transitioning in January 2020, I started on the hormones. I was closeted and socially and only open to a handful of people. So Casey knew, she was very well aware of me going on hormones. However, one of the blocker I was taking, spironolactone, did come with severe side effects, for me at least.
Yeah. Not
everyone experiences those, but I did, without sort of realizing, until I was really deep taking it every day and some changes were happening. Physically, I ended up having too many side effects with Spiro. And so physically, mentally, emotionally, I was unavailable. Spiro really did affect me. It put me in, ultimately I had brain fog. Physically, I was sleeping 12 hours and I was exhausted. and at the end of the day of a work day or school day, I just wanted to sit and watch something because I couldn't do anything. And so I couldn't communicate. It was near impossible for me to be present, and I didn't realize for a while. It took nearly a year later until I finally figured it out, because I stopped hormones in August of that same year, at least the Spiro. I stayed on estrogen for maybe 2 more months, but then I stopped that one too, to try and see if transitioning was the problem or if the hormones were the problem for me. It ended up being not the case. The rise in testosterone in my body made things worse, actually. So it ended up being the blocker. I didn't figure that out until with my doctor we switched it. And when I got into the new HRT regimen, which was with AndroCur, so keep that in mind. If one blocker doesn't work for you, or one version of HRT doesn't work for you, talk to your doctor, because maybe another one might work. There's different testosterone blockers. There's different ways of getting hormones as well for you. I'm speaking from a trans woman's perspective. So there's also different ways of getting estrogen in your body. So if one way doesn't work, maybe another might work. All that to say, communication-wise, especially when I started, wasn't so great.
Yeah.
And neither of us really figured that out until a little later
on,
about a year later. And then from there on, when I switched it up and I started communicating better, it got a lot better between us. In every aspect, in our daily private life to our public life, things got a lot better. So that's a bit of introduction to us. I figured some of you asked a few questions. We had a lot of comments that were very sweet, so I just wanted to start with some of these and see where we can head with this conversation. So let's start with the first one. Kenya asked, how did your wife begin to accept your transition in a positive light while ignoring outsiders?
Ignoring like the outsider public persona, or
not
like
caring about whatever other people, I think, whatever people think about.
Or interpretation of the question. Yeah. Well, I feel like at first, because you were still closeted, I didn't have to struggle with that issue. Now I think we do have to struggle with that issue, but I've also adopted more of a go F yourself. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse in these videos, but I'm gonna just say it like that. Persona. And I think at first for me it was hard because of how unsure you were about it yourself. That is what really, my personal experience, was difficult. Because I feel like if immediately you were like, I know that this is what I want to do, this is who I am, then I probably would have been like, okay, as long as this is who you feel you are, then that's what I want for you, because that'll make you happy. And yeah, it's a, I don't know, it's like, I feel like these are two questions at the same time, because I definitely struggled with seeing it in a positive look, but I think that's mostly related to the fact that you still kind of weren't sure of it yourself.
Yeah, so if I know this was a question for you, but at least what I could maybe say is that when I was still questioning things, I think Casey was the first one to see the positive of me living that way. Yes, like I couldn't really see myself fully going out there presenting and be comfortable with it, at least for a long time. It took me 4 years to come out of the closet, so 4 years where Casey knew, I knew, and my family knew, but I wasn't living it. So I think once I accepted it, which is only a year ago, honestly, it was last summer, once I started accepting it and willing to go through with it, once I started seeing it myself in a positive light, I think Casey again was before me could see it, where I couldn't. Like, she helped me with makeup and clothes, and she could see what I couldn't, and it took until she showed me what was possible that I think we both saw it in a positive light. But honestly, I think Casey saw it before me through it all, which is what helped me ultimately fully come out. It might have taken me a little longer. I would have come out anyways at some point.
Right.
But because I couldn't live through that long term. But yeah, I think Casey was saw it in positive light before me. I know it's not the case with everyone.
Yeah, but, I'm sorry if that's not the answer you're looking for. I'm sorry. I was just, I don't know. It's not that I was like excited in any kind of formal way, but it was just, I could see that this was going to affect her in a bird. I could see that this was affecting her in a negative way, living basically a lie, not being who you are every day. And I'm sure most of you know what that's like. And it's incredibly harmful to your mental health and to your physical health as well. So I saw that kind of like spark of joy whenever we would do things that made you present more feminine, and that for me was kind of an indication saying this is the right decision.
So yeah, hopefully we sort of answered that question. Maybe, do you mind if I tell him? I think your orientation, because that could also
sure,
help.
Go ahead, yeah.
You can go.
Well, my sexual orientation, I am bisexual, pan-bisexual. I like bi itself because it basically means two or more genders, and yeah. So that is another factor.
Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. Casey did come out before I did as bisexual, which also made it easier for me to come out to her very early on.
Yeah.
Which is why when I said we should prefix it with like most couples don't last through it, is sometimes if the sexuality is very much I'm straight, it could be very difficult if suddenly the couple turns into a lesbian relationship or a gay relationship or something other, but
it's very case by case basis.
Yeah.
But in our case particularly, it kind of worked because I'm cool with that.
So that hopefully that sort of answers a little bit in that one. Chris says, "Nice, you're still together." Thank you, Chris. I'm also very happy that we are.
Me too.
Kelly says, "Can't wait for it." Alexandra has a question for you. For my cis wife.
That's me.
Okay, so maybe that one will be a little difficult to answer, but we'll try. So how did you feel about the loss of her penis? My now ex-wife had quite some trouble accepting that it became off limits. So to clarify maybe something, I haven't yet had GRS. It is going to happen though, and that's a conversation we've had.
We've had and we're still continuing to have because it's something that we know that you're going to have the operation, but it's something that we're still like, oh yes, this is something that is going to leave that we've had for quite a while in our relationship. Yeah. And it is weird. I think it is a weird transition for sure. And I don't mean like transition, but just a general sense of the word transition, but to go from having one constant in your sex life to it being a completely different genitalia. But I'm honestly looking forward to it because me personally, as someone who is openly bi, who hasn't had the opportunity to be in a lesbian relationship or a loving woman relationship, I'm honestly looking forward to that part of our journey. But yeah, no, I will miss it. I have a name, but like, I will miss it. But yeah, I understand.
Yeah, let's maybe not go into those details. But yes, so again, I haven't gone through it yet. It is something that's going to happen. It is something that, yes, we have spoken about. Mm-hmm. But then again, I don't know about every couple, but for us, the dynamic in the bedroom has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Since I came out, especially.
In a very positive way.
Yes, in a positive way, honestly. It has been better for me personally, and we've talked about it in Casey as well. It has been a lot better since I've come out, since the dynamic has sort of changed in the bedroom. Without, again, going into details. But that may be why your ex-wife had some issue. Maybe she does consider herself straight, and having the idea of a different genitalia might have been very difficult.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know better than we do on this case, because it was your partnership back then. But for us, I think what does help is that, again, Casey is bi, and that the idea of that sort of changing
isn't so much of a loss.
Yeah, isn't so much of a loss. I mean, yeah, like you said, we'll miss it in
sad,
some ways, but in others, I think
yeah,
we are looking forward to the change that may happen. And again, it might not be everyone's cup of tea, but for us, I think it's something that we had to discuss before I even started applying for it, because I mean, it's ultimately it's my decision.
It's your decision, but ultimately being included in that decision is what a partnership is.
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure that Casey was okay if I went through with this, because everyone's transition is different. Not everyone wants GRS, FFS, or any of these surgeries. However, I've never liked mine. I always hated it through puberty afterwards, and it's a wonder I didn't realize in puberty that was bothering me so much. But I don't want it, and I don't like using it in an intimate way either. So I'm looking forward to it, and I really wanted to include Casey in at least the decision making, even though again the final word is mine, because it's based off of how I feel I should be and what I want. But yeah, and again, like I said, Casey being bisexual does help a lot in that respect. Hopefully we answered somewhat, Alexandra. So
these questions are hard because they're very personal, experience based, but yeah.
But I'm sorry that it was trouble accepting it. It's not. Again, it's because transitioning is not a common thing. It's difficult for people to sort of go through all of the motions, to even question their own sexual orientation in a partnership when you've thought you were straight your entire life and your partner changes. Potentially their orientation might have a light bulb moment there. Oh no, I was never straight. Yeah. But that's not always the case, and that might be a little difficult.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were gonna say?
No. It's just we're sorry for what happened, but
yeah,
I hope you can find someone who accepts you the way you are.
There's definitely people out there who really don't have genitalia preference, or who might, but we'll go with what you have, Alexandra. It's it's unfortunate that it's a conversation we still have to have with people, but look, genital preference is something that people have, and okay, but hopefully you'll find someone who doesn't have an issue with it.
Yeah.
We have Emma, who said, I think that one's more to me, but we'll both talk to it because it's, so how did you manage going through the emotional changes and mood swings that HRT brings? Did you rely on counseling? Did it affect your marriage? So, I think we'll both have something to say on that one, but a bit like I said earlier, when I first started transitioning, Spyro was affecting me in massively negative ways. Yeah. So being not physically, emotionally, and mentally present made it very difficult. So throughout that first year, until I figured out what was going on, it deepened my depression because Spyro just had side effects for me that weren't good, that AndroCur doesn't have for me. That's the positive, is that there are different options. So, but yes, it did affect us. We, unfortunately, it managed to create a void between us, something that we took a little longer than a year to sort of cross. We were distant, both physically and emotionally, for that time. And until I found the proper balance, I couldn't be there either. I couldn't be there mentally. I couldn't be there for Casey for a while. And so, yeah, we eventually did rely on counseling. I mean, we won't go into every details, but we did go to counseling to help restart a relationship.
It was more or less for other particular reasons in a relationship, other than your transition, but it did combine into what we had both experienced, because I also didn't do my best to try and help her communicate.
I think it is difficult because you didn't necessarily know what to expect from it either.
Fair enough.
I knew more about what the effects of hormones were, but I didn't realize how bad the side effects could be for me, and it took me 8 months to even, not 8 months, it took me a year to even realize that what was the issue here. So it did affect our marriage.
Yes.
It did really hurt for a while, hurt the marriage. It created distance, and we weren't there for each other during that time, at least in the beginning. However,
the counseling really did help.
The counseling did help. Finding the right balance for HRT. The switch for me made the biggest difference. It sort of unlocked what some people have when they start HRT, where they start feeling emotions that they haven't had for a while. And so
much crying.
So much crying. It took until I found that right balance, that right blocker, for me to finally truly feel the effects of estrogen and the emotional change in me and the correct change in me that made it possible for me to now then express more with Casey. And our while in the beginning was harder, communication was not really present.
Yeah.
Now it is.
It was non-existent, pretty much.
Yeah, it was non-existent for a bit. But now it is. Now it's different. Now I communicate every emotion I feel with Casey, and Casey does it as well. Yeah. It's easier for us, I think, to say it, to freely express what we feel, how we feel, and what we should do. It's honestly because the dynamic has changed in our social lives, because the dynamic has changed intimately, we've gotten a lot closer, I think, after the initial change.
Sorry, I did something.
It's okay. I can find it again. So hopefully that sort of answers a little bit there. Again, yes, it did affect our marriage, but I think you're right. Did we do counseling? Yes, we did because we thought it was an important thing to get a neutral third party to sort of help us navigate the new changes that were more in the positive light and see what we could do and what we should work on. So if it's something that you feel, honestly, I think if you can afford it, because I'm sorry,
that is unfortunately.
It does come down to that. If you can afford it,
it is a privilege to be able to have access to therapy and healthcare.
So I think it's a good idea to get counseling. I think if you go through a transition with, let me also say that, with someone who is trans positive.
Yeah, that's important.
Because again, there's no standard in psychology, there's no standard in therapy, there's no standard in the medical field for trans healthcare yet.
Yeah.
So one thing to keep in mind is if you want to get therapy with your partner, a good thing to think about is the therapist trans friendly? One thing we found out at Pride in New York was that if a therapist doesn't necessarily specify LGBTQ friendly, but they say kink friendly or fetish they specialize in those things, which is weird to say, but they will be trans friendly. Generally. They will be queer friendly because for some reason the training that they get from that sort of part will also include queer relationships. So that could be a good thing for anyone who goes through transition. If you can afford it, counseling or therapy or couples therapy might be a good thing, just to keep keep each other in check.
Yeah.
Essentially, with someone who's able to, cut through the BS.
Right. You need to be able to self-regulate your relationship, but at a certain point, if you guys are both kind of teetering on the scale, it's better to have a third-party person, professional, come in and say, hey, you're both correct, but I think here's what you need to do now.
Yeah. And it can also help because confirm if you're on the right path.
Yeah.
Like it'll tell you, oh, you guys are doing really well. I think this is correct, or this is maybe not so great, but go through the other. They'll help you either confirm or maybe guide you in the correct path. So, I think we went a little bit on a tangent, but yes. I think it's a good idea. Laura says beautiful picture of you all. So for those who maybe have not seen, it's we were in New York for Pride, and
this was on your birthday.
This was on my birthday. I dressed really witchy because I really enjoy that. And yeah, so thank you. Let me find now the post again. Benjamin's really sweet as well. What an astonishingly gorgeous couple. Y'all freaking rule. Straight up love you both to death.
Thank you, Benjamin.
Allison says, thank you for doing this. I also transitioned during marriage and stayed married for 17 years afterward until my wife's death last year. That unfortunately means she can no longer answer my questions, still it might be interesting to compare notes. I am really sorry, Allison. My condolences. I can't imagine losing my partner. But yeah, hopefully some of the stuff that we talk about you can sort of relate to or see the differences, and maybe if you feel like commenting under this video some of the differences you've had, I think people would appreciate it.
Yeah, and we'd also love to hear it.
Yeah, it's again, every couple is very different. I think we're very lucky, but not everyone is, and I guess you were very lucky for being 17 years after your transition. It's really nice to hear. It always gives me hope when I see couples go through it, and there's some that do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're already tearing up now.
But thanks for commenting, Allison. Flora says yes, please, to us doing a video. Emma, this will be interesting no matter what gets asked or what you tell us. And the video, when this comes out, it'll be 6 p.m. today. Eastern Standard Time, because we do live on the East Coast in Canada. Ellen says, no questions, just prayers for continued strength, good health, and love to you both. Wishing you all the happiness life has to offer. Thank you very much, Ellen. Xanadu says, same with me and my wifey, so y'all can get some answers from me. Another perspective. So Xanadu, in the comments I saw that you started answering some people. Thank you. If you have any questions, Xanadu says that they could answer for you. So Cal says, beautiful couple, sending love to you both. Kai? Hopefully I'm saying your name right.
I think Kai.
Okay, well thank you, Kai. And Katie, what a beautiful couple. Thank you, Katie. And the last comment was, I'm wondering if anyone in here, 2 years into transitioning, developed symptoms mimicking agoraphobia. I'm scared that I'm the only one and will be forced to detransition. So this is a question from Kelly. If some of you have an answer that might be better than ours, please answer. Unfortunately, I don't know. I haven't developed agoraphobia due to transitioning. I know as trans people we're hyper aware of crowds and ourselves in public. I still am. I mean, I've only been out for 7 months, almost 8. So I know I'm hyper aware, but I haven't developed agoraphobia. I had side effects from the drugs, like I said earlier, with Spyro. But since changing, those side effects have gone away. Those mental, physical, and emotional problems have all gone away. But agoraphobia, that might be a good thing to, again, comes back to that same point. I wish it was covered everywhere in the world, but if you can find an expert in this, if you can find a therapist or a psychologist that could help you out with maybe answering that, again, trans-friendly, because otherwise they'll most likely blame
the whole thing,
the transition. I don't know if it is the HRT. I honestly, it's very possible because there is side effects to HRT.
Yeah, so it might have heightened anxiety and brought on a major fear of crowds and overstimulation from that. But that's the thing, we don't know about your transition. We don't know what medication you've been taking. We don't know if it even is a result of medication.
Yeah.
So find a professional if you can, somebody who's LGBTQ friendly.
I mean, if you've already done those steps, I'm sorry that we're maybe parroting whatever things you've already done. But I mean, I think it's always a good thing if you start developing something. Consult maybe your medical doctor if, again, that doctor is trans-friendly. At the very least, that could be a first step. And if not, if you can, a psychologist that's trans-friendly might also be able to see if it is maybe a result of something else than HRT. I can't say for sure that if it's HRT. I'm no medical expert. Same thing with Casey. Unfortunately, we're not experts on that one. We just know from personal experience. But it's very possible other trans people who are in HRT have developed some fear or some phobia that has been heightened because of transitioning. But if that's the case, if anyone could help out Kelly here, that would be great. And Kelly, I think if you haven't done it, it might be a good thing to first talk to your medical doctor, and then a psychologist would maybe help confirm or deny some stuff that you may have, or maybe help you cope with it or deal with it. ultimately that's what they're here to do, is to help us move with sort of navigate the world given certain things that we have, phobias or a mental health issue or something like that. So yeah, so those were all the questions. Thank you for those questions. I really appreciate it. It got us to sort of talk about different things. Some I didn't think we would go on tangents, but we did.
Yeah, sorry, apologies. We're big tangent people.
Yeah, if something pops up, like we'll look at it and be like, oh,
yeah,
other subject.
The neurodivergency of it all.
Yeah, well, yes. So, I don't know. Is there anything else you think we might have missed, or maybe we should talk about?
I think we got all the hit all the bases, but if you ever have any more questions or you like this video, we can always do another one.
Yeah, we can definitely do another one. Casey was very open to do this, so it was a proposition that the other trans gurus had about having Casey over and talk about our relationship a bit and how it worked through transition. So yeah, if you do have any other questions, you can feel free to put them under this video. If we think of other things, of other conversations we could have, we might do it again, because I feel like we're not the only ones who've gone through it, and I know some people might have gone through it or will go through it. So
yeah. If
there are any questions, please feel free to ask. Like you saw in the conversation, we're not afraid to talk about those things. We'll be pretty open about answering those questions. So hopefully this was somewhat enlightening for some of you, or it was nice to hear. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. If we have enough of them, we'll come back and do another one of these. Now that you know a little bit more about us, and now that you've met Casey, again, thanks so much for watching this and for following us on Trans Gurus. Yeah, so you'll see me around again posting. Alice in Wonderland is sticking by, and I'll have more posts coming up soon whenever I find them. Or if you have some that you want to send to us, please feel free. We will sometimes post them when we feel that they're appropriate for the page. So yeah, hope you have a great evening in the meantime, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, stay hydrated.
Oh yeah, in this heat, stay hydrated. Bye, y'all.
Bye.